Get ready for Netflix's gripping new medical drama, Pulse. Set in a cutting-edge Miami trauma center, third-year resident Dr. Danny Sims is unexpectedly thrust into a promotion when beloved chief resident Dr. Xander Phillips gets suspended. Then, with the emotional and physical stakes at their highest, a storm will push the hospital and its residents to their limits. Witness how life can change in a heartbeat when you're operating under pressure. Watch Pulse, only on Netflix.
In the jungle, the mighty jungle, the lion sleeps tonight.
Yeah.
In the jungle, the mighty jungle, the lion sleeps tonight.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, okay.
Barbershop.
Just to keep us
Good way to start.
It's all on camera.
That's the
Excellent. Okay.
That's the breakout video, isn't it?
That should definitely be one of the shorts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Things that happen.
Before the podcast starts. Yeah.
All right, I'm so just jacked up and full of life. I'm ready for the next podcast. God damn it. All right. I'm Kirk Pearson.
I'm Rowan Cook.
And together it's just coffee.
It's just coffee.
It's just coffee. So when we say it's just coffee, you got to go, it's just coffee.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. This week with us, we're going to be chatting with owner of a very popular cafe called Nigel, or multiple cafes called Nigel. Roaster, born and raised, amazing dad, Hawkers fan, and just all-around good bloke, Dan Dick. Dan Dick, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. Really appreciate
There's
it.
a bit of a cappella going on just before we hit record. I hope the world gets to see that one day. Nice job.
Yeah, head to the socials if you want to see it. We just jumped into a bit of, what is it called? The Lion Sleeps Tonight? Or yeah, it was beautiful.
So the sort of energy we like to bring to podcasting.
Yeah.
No, and you know, great banter, but I always like to start the podcast off, if I can, with a bit of high energy. You know, have a good start, a good finish. You know, we get to the juicy bits in the end. I haven't disclosed to everyone. I certainly didn't disclose this to you that I was going to ask you to do this, and I think you know what I'm going to ask you to do.
Oh, so I was going to ask you to take your shirt off.
No. Dan is a master of impersonating one of Australia's finest moments from a current affair. So a few years ago, many years ago, maybe even a decade ago, there was a dog incident that happened on a current affair, and the guy was like a rabid wild animal when he did his impersonation.
Bring up the clip now.
I came out into the front yard and the dogs were across the road, and as soon as they saw me, they came bounding over.
Plays ahead. But Dan, I'm going to ask you just for a second, take your headphones off, glasses if you need to. Now, I need you to do the whole thing. Just make sure you don't knock over the mic. Just remind the world what they're missing out of.
He came bounding over.
Oh, look, he came bounding over. The dog's here now.
The dog came over.
I told you it was good. I told you it was good.
It's all about the level of enthusiasm you have. You've got to commit to the gag. There's a bit there to be made. And iconic television, really, isn't it?
It was good.
Now I got kind of pre-warned that this was coming. That was bloody incredible. That was like so pinpoint accurate. That was amazing.
Oh, well, welcome to the show, Dan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for coming by. It's been a pleasure having you. I don't think we need to do
no,
any more.
That's a wrap.
I
I do spend a lot of time on the
Should we
internet.
just go?
That's really my will.
The poor listeners at home are just like their AirPods are exploding.
Right, come on,
in
you
their
give us one.
ears.
You give us one.
I don't know. I can't do it.
No one can ever do it as good as Dan Dick. But
There you go.
hey, it's just coffee.
It's just coffee.
It's just coffee.
It's just a rabid dog.
We got the dog awake, so we were trying to give him away, but you kept him here. But fuck it, let's just let him join.
Yeah.
Okay, welcome to the show. As we mentioned, you've got actually quite the portfolio amassing of coffee venues now. So 4 cafes now?
5.
5. Hey, okay, 5. Okay, so is that
6,
a teaser?
kind of. I've got shares in a 6th as well.
Okay, all right. So, you know.
Yeah, I've got five little coffee shops all called Nigel, named after my grandfather, which was just ticked over 5 years last month. And I've got shares in a great little cafe in Albert Park called Leaps and Bounds.
Now, was that busy for the Formula One? I imagine it would have been.
It was better last year. The weather sort of affected us a little bit this year, but no, it does certainly experience a nice little seasonal bump with the things that are happening on the Bayside. But no.
Beautiful.
Okay. Well, nice. And I think a good introduction to this is I used to do a podcast, which is how Rowan and I met, and I interviewed you previously on it. And at that stage, you had just had the one cafe, I believe.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
so it's very great to see that you've grown over the years and And now you're where you're at now, and
Yeah, it's been, as I said, it's kind of weird to look back, and it's been 5 years, because you start with a concept in mind, and where I began is very different to where I've ended, because at that time I was working for St. Ali, the coffee roaster, as running their sales team essentially. Stepped aside to open a little business as a side earner, as a sort of little sabbatical, with the idea of going back to doing sales and having that operating on the side, which I did. And then the pandemic happened. And when you're faced with what we were in sort of February 2020, where we didn't know what was going to happen, we didn't know how we were going to manage it, and you've just sunk, $100,000 into a business, your priority is to protecting that asset. So I walked into Salvatore Malatesta's office and said, unfortunately, that will be me. I need to go protect the asset. And we were plunged into lockdown and some bizarre circumstances that led to a pretty rapid expansion on my part. So, look, there was opportunities to be had, and I was able to leverage those. And here we are 5 years later with 5 new branches and a coffee business that's just begun.
Do I remember you being on a little news segment during the pandemic? There was a little famous moment that popped up there. What happened to that?
That's right. Look, it was obviously a pretty grim time for a lot of people out there. So a simple gesture that was intentioned with the best of my heart was just to say to people, look, if you've lost work, if you don't have, money in your pocket and you need a coffee, just come in, let us know, and we'll sort you out. And that caught wind, and a couple other cafes kind of picked it up, and it was traced back to me. So they came in and sort of asked us about the state of the nation, how things were going from a hospitality perspective, and said, you're doing this little thing. It was a little bit embarrassing at the time, because in the end, I don't think we had many people take us up on it, but it made us look really good. But as I said, it was with the best of intention.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great offer there. What a beautiful, good bloke.
Oh, you're trying to little things. Like at the end of the day, it's a cup of coffee out of our store. It makes people, it's why I've been doing it for as long as I have, is that sharing coffee is coffee in a big way is sort of my love language.
Yeah.
To be a little bit ick about that, but
no, I agree, man.
It's how I express myself to lots of people is sharing coffee, and I've been very fortunate over the last 5 years to do that. 1,000 cups a day, a couple thousand cups a week with as many people as we do. So.
Yeah, I completely agree. Outside of the same with coffee, the same with food. Just over the weekend, I had my family over Sunday for Easter, and then it was my partner's dad's birthday. Had them over on the Monday, had the hibachi out, just went to town, had like 20 things going, cooking up a storm. But when people are like, you don't have to go to all this effort, I'm like, this is my way of showing that I care.
Exactly. My wife always says when we have people over, don't you get sick of always having to make people coffee? Like, isn't that what you do for work? I'm like, no, I love making people coffee, especially in my home,
Now, we like to start off the show with a little question just to kind of know, because I think a lot of people think that coffee nerds, their order is going to be something crazy, but what's your just go-to day-to-day standard cup of coffee?
I drink everything. I get asked this a lot, and I literally will go into any place I'm getting and probably get a bit of a barista breakfast usually, which is an espresso, a cup of filter, and a milky. But you can't go past a chino.
Oh, yeah, good chino, the chino. We'll get into that in a second, but that for everyone at home, you just kind of explained it. But a barista breakfast, what is it? How do you order it if you're not a barista?
Oh, it's a sampling platter essentially. Yep. So you get an opportunity.
The Whitman sampler.
Yeah, you get an opportunity to taste the best of what the baristas have got available, whether that's different single origins on the black stuff, or if there's something different of a milk based as well. A lot of places now are doing different funky, more inventive milk blends or single origins, but give them an opportunity to say, these are the things that we really like that we've got behind the bar that we can share with you. And I'm all about it, because it gives you a great sort of range of things to try. So go into your cafe, talk to baristas and ask them if they can, paint you with all the colours of the rainbow.
And you just mentioned before, can't go past the chino. I've got to ask, there's been a little bit of a social movement. It's taking over the web. It's everywhere. It's the big butt chino. It's that big domed chino. Can you tell us a little bit about where this has started and why it's taken off?
Well, in the last couple of weeks, I'm very fortunate to have brought on our first wholesale customer for my my coffee roasting business, Born and Raised, and a really cool sort of full circle moment for me. Two gentlemen in Coburg North have opened up Officer. Leon Holdsworth, who was the head barista at St. Ali when I was working there back in 2014, he taught me a huge amount of what I know about coffee and what's shaped.
And me.
And so many people in the industry who've been through St. Ali in particular. And one of the most iconic things about him was his ability to pour the most silky and just delicious cappuccinos. And he always described as a good cappuccino should be like a dessert. It should be the consistency of melting ice cream sort of thing. So we'd get this sort of kind of put the coffee on the pass, and he'd have a dome in such a way that the viscosity of it would just hang on. That's when you knew it was perfect. So you literally couldn't pick it up. You had to get face to chino and just take that first mouthful straight off the bar, straight onto your nose. And it's just, heaven in a cup, really.
And it's also like blood temperature, so 45 degrees. So it's not your typical hot thing. It's like it's an experience.
Right, because I wanted to do a video about this. So I've got to get all the details and facts right. So we're talking like what, 50 degrees, 45 degree kind of milk? Like,
around that territory. You're sort of talking like...
Nice high fat percentage milk too.
Yeah.
It's the sweetest point before you reach the Maillard process in the heating of the milk proteins as well.
And it feels like the videos that are kind of going around, which you might see, is just that dome. And when you have that perfect dome and you can kind of just swirl the cup and it just moves like a wave. It doesn't spill.
It's got a little meniscus.
It's got a little meniscus. It just holds it there.
It's inviting.
It moves. It's like you do it in slow motion. It's just hypnotic. So I want to make one on the channel soon. Maybe after the pod, you can show me one and we can.
I would love to.
Make sure we get the.
But just so the world
right.
knows, no one does it like Leon Holdsworth does.
We
can all try and replicate it. And Leon's like. He's a very quiet, reserved guy, and he might even hate that I talk about this, but he's the best barista I've ever met.
I'd agree with that as well.
Hands down. I make a lot of good coffee. I work with a lot of good coffee. But say, for example, you've got one coffee left for the rest of your life, and you've got to choose one person to make it. I think I'm choosing Leon Holdsworth.
That's very true.
And a lot of the who's who of Melbourne coffee would do the same.
Now, before we jump into some questions, we got some some coffee news.
In the latest breaking news for Melbourne this week, all right, coffee grounds show potential to clean water supplies. Would you believe it?
What can't they do?
What can't they do? So coffee grounds have been tested in a laboratory setting for their potential use as a cleanup agent of common agricultural runoff, suggesting that along with compost, snail repellent, and many other uses, used coffee grounds could protect water sources from agricultural pollution. The study looked at bentazone, a common herbicide used in agriculture, and found that when coffee grounds are activated with zinc chloride, the carbon molecules therein could remove 70% of the bentazone content from contaminated water.
And you know what I've always said? If we're not removing at least 60% of the bentazone, I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah, no, fuck it. I don't want to know.
This is a bentazone-free zone.
Yeah.
I need that on a T-shirt.
Yeah, bentazone-free zone. Agricultural runoff from vegetable and grain farming is one of the largest sources of water pollution in human society. Chemicals or fertilizers are spread over fields and rains wash excess into the waterways. So it could be, coffee just saving the day yet again. It can be used as like biofuel, can be used to help grow mushrooms, can be used for all sorts of things. Add another to the list.
Apart from when we talked to our mate Daniel from Ethiopia, who was like the runoff from the coffee farms is destroying the environment up there. So, it giveth and it taketh away.
Well, you can't have the cream without the milk, I guess, so to speak. But, hey, it happens.
Now, this next news story, probably going to ring very true to you. Cafe owners over here. Kirk, please take us away.
Okay, so ABC are saying that $5.50 isn't enough for a cup of coffee, and I think that's worthy of a button push. Okay, our recent survey of Australian capital cities found that the average price of a small takeaway flat white at specialty venues is $4.78. But in some international capitals, it's almost double this. Even after adjusting for local purchasing power parity. So in London, a small flat white costs about $6.95, Singapore $8.40, in Athens as much as $9.95. Athens, bit of a different economic situation. But does this put Australia at risk of losing its renowned coffee culture? Is it promoting cafes to sell crappy coffees? Dan Dick.
Oh, look, coffee prices in Melbourne in particular are a reflection of supply and demand. And unfortunately for retailers, we are a victim of our own success story, really, aren't we? Because we have proliferated this idea that every location is somewhere you can get great specialty coffee. And as such, you've never seen more operators lean into that, which is great for exposure, but not necessarily great for pricing.
I think it's very important here to not sort of blame the consumer as well, because we say, we should be making more coffee. I feel like it's an issue that the industry has helped create as well. Like you're entering the wholesale coffee market, and the competition to win new customers is very difficult, and at oftentimes a race to the bottom, and not something that's really going to benefit producers in the long run. So And that's really where the risk could be. So if people who grow the coffee don't make enough money to sustain the practice, they'll just leave, and then there'll be a lower supply in general.
Yeah, well, you got to set your price with what you're comfortable with, and live and die by the results of that, right? So if I set my pricing at a point that doesn't sustain the long term of my business, then ultimately I haven't delivered on a value proposition that customers relate to and can continue to participate in. So, as long you charge whatever you like, essentially, as long as you're happy with that. If you want to sell $2 coffee and try and have a line out the door and just win business by death by 1,000 cuts, have margin foregone for volume, then power to you. If you want to sell less cups at a higher margin as well, you better make sure that cup is representing extreme value to the consumer in terms of how quality the service is, how happy they are when they walk away.
Yeah, well, I think that's really well put. And it's very funny that you said $2 to be exact, because we had Ross Quayle on the show the other week.
You know Ross well.
I know Ross very well.
Have you had a few quailings?
I've been quailed a number of times.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds filthy. He was saying when he was on last time, he goes, pound for pound, his extra hot take with 2 sugars was that Coles coffee, the $2 coffee from Coles, pound for pound, the best coffee that you can get value for money in Australia.
Wow.
What are your thoughts on that?
Having not participated in $2 Coles coffee, I probably can't comment. I would find it very hard to think that any button press machine can come close to the sort of coffees I've had around.
I don't think it could come close. I think the argument would be that like for $2 versus however much you're paying on the other side, like that comparison gap isn't. And I didn't know how I felt about that. I've had a few of those like Eversys kind of coffees and that kind of thing. But I tell you, I was up in Byron at some very expensive places having very, expensive coffees, between the $7 to $9 kind of range that were all horrific. And then on the way back at a service station, it had the Coles, whatever the Coles affiliate service station is, had the machine in there, and we got one, and it was by far the best coffee that we had up there, and the milk texture was unbelievable.
I feel like your head's going to be on a spike after this episode.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I think it's just the balance of like where those things are. Obviously, I think the specialty range is going to be better in that. I think there's a sign, especially in somewhere like Byron, where you're getting a lot of staff members that are passing through that aren't there for long, that maybe haven't got the training, aren't able to make the coffees in the way that they need to be and the way they need to be represented. And then you just have a machine that's like, this is the same thing every time, baby, bang,
I don't know.
bang.
I still reckon some people are going to align their chakras, activate some almonds, and then they're going to come and kick your ass.
Mate, look at the channel. Look at the comments.
With
I've
freshly
got enough
sunned
of it.
buttholes.
You're done. You are
I'm done. It's over. It was nice knowing you guys. Goodbye.
Okay, well, we thought we'd take this opportunity to ask some horror stories that you've had in the cafe. So who wants to start? Who wants to tell their first horror story?
Cafe horror stories. Look, I got one. It's not much of a horror story. It just kind of talks about like just dealing with customers. There was a certain point, I think, in Melbourne. I think maybe we've moved back again, especially after COVID, but maybe around like 2009 when cafe culture was just like hitting at its peak. It was just taking off. And I feel like the customer is always right thing kind of went out the window a little bit for those popular cafes. And I remember once I was working in a busy cafe, 40-degree day, stinking hot. We got the air conditioner running and there was a line out the door, 50 minutes, about 40 people waiting there. We had a table of 4 people sitting there and they're like, mate, you got to turn off the aircon. It's too cold for us. It's blowing right on us under here. And I was just like, I'm so sorry, but we've got to leave it on. It's very hot in here. We've got to do that. And they're like, I'm telling you, you need to turn off this aircon or we're going to leave. I'm like, mate, I can move you to another table. He goes, if you don't turn it off, we're leaving. And I just said, great, we'll see you later. Table of 4 at the door, come on in. And I made them awkwardly walk past each other as they exited and the new table entered. And you could see the new table were like awkward, but also like, oh my God, we got a table. And it was just that moment where it's like the power imbalance had shifted a little.
Battle Royale. Dan, horror story.
I was working at a venue in quite a busy shift. There was a cry from the kitchen and I walked in to be greeted by the head chef in about an inch of nice brown murky water around his Birkenstocks. And it had turned out that this poor, busy, neglected cafe hadn't had its grease trapped emptied in quite some time, to the point where it was spilling up through the extraction in the floor. And when we got the guys to come out to try and clear it, it was so blocked and congealed that they had to excavate the floor on the outside of the kitchen to pop open the top to physically jackhammer out the kitchen waste because it wouldn't break down from the normal chemicals that they use to then have it pumped out. So a couple of days later, and a smell that will outlast religion.
Oh my God. The smell of a grease trap, if you hadn't had it before, is just horrific. It's one of the worst smells, almost worse than sewage. And excavated out of the floor. Horrific. How long do you have to be sitting like that, did you say?
It would have been months that the thing hadn't been cleared, potentially over years.
I reckon years you're looking at for it to get that bad.
So yeah, it wasn't good.
That's some neglect. I mean, I'm going to keep mine short and sweet. I rocked up to work after not sleeping at all. I'd been out into one of Melbourne's favourite venues, Revolver, and my boss called me and was like, Kirk, where in God's green earth are you? Didn't sleep. I'd just gotten home to go to bed. I'd had a shower and they said, oh, need you to come in. Went to work. I was pouring a coffee, couldn't even make it inside the cup. And as my punishment for rocking up to work late, I had to work the whole 10-hour days.
Oh, my God.
Rough.
But wait, were you actually scheduled on that day and just forgot? Or
Yeah.
So. Okay. I was going to say, if it was just a call up, like
It's on them, really.
That's fine.
Caveat emptor.
But also, I got to say, the hungover shift when you're starting off no sleep. I mean, there are people who can't pull it off, and that's no good. If your staff's rocking in, they can't do it, and they've got to be sent home, no good. But when you come in of a hungover shift and something just comes over you that you just get in that zone and you power through. And I tell you what, when you get to the end of that day,
you get a bit more
like
seasoned at it as you go on.
I think the last time that happened to me was Boxing Day 2021. And obviously it was just prior to them letting it rip. So all the cafes down High Street were closed, unbeknownst to me. Coming in after Christmas Day, it had been a heavy day on the pans and a couple of vinos. And it was me and my least experienced casual, and nowhere else was open. And it was like that scene from The Bear where the ticket machines, everyone who's worked in hospitality has had this same reoccurring nightmare where the ticket machine just won't stop printing, except it was me in there sweating bullets, trying to keep up. It was half-hour wait all day. I think I did 450 coffees by myself over a 4-hour period. It was wild.
That is horrific. And when you're working with an inexperienced staff member, I've had those ones where you're working with the barista that doesn't know what they're doing. It also takes the love out of it for you because you're pumping out something that you know isn't the best quality product. And you just like, that's again our love language of like, when I just pour a silky coffee and send it on its way, I'm like, oh, you beauty.
I just took solace in the fact that all the customers there could clearly see how hard I was struggling at the day. And I think that is legitimately the last time I worked hungover.
I think that's actually a true point. I think there's the point of, I think customers are nice to staff and they can see them getting smashed, that they actually stand back and go, okay, I can wait. I understand this is happening. So when you can see the staff members kind of dawdling around and not doing much. But I give credit to the customer that when they see that you're doing your absolute best, in general, they're like, do your thing, do your thing.
All right. How did you guys meet? Because I know how Dan and I met, working together, colleagues, as we just mentioned. But how did you two meet?
We met at a little old place called George's in Camberwell.
Still standing.
Indeed. Still pumping out curry pasta.
Yeah. Was that your first introduction to coffee?
Yeah, I think it was actually. Yeah, I'd worked in pizza shops all through high school. I worked my first job at 14 and 9 months was at Pizza Hut, getting paid $5.70 an hour. And then,
how the times have changed.
They charge you $35 for a hat and a polo, so you work your first 7-hour shift for free, which was lovely. But no, so I think that was 2008.
Yep.
Yeah, the just in between finishing high school for me and going on my gap year. So we were working at George's there, met your good self and a number of other people, and started to get a bit of an interest then.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember being there, like I hadn't really drunk coffee much before that point. I remember like just trying some of the espressos and just kind of grimacing. Probably both because I wasn't used to it because of the quality of the coffee that I was making. But that was where it all started for me too. And we both just kind of worked out and paths crossed at a few different shops along the way.
Cross paths more particularly at 3 Bags Full.
Correct.
When it was sort of at the peak of its powers as well. So, that's when I'd really started to create an appreciation for coffee, and where I was working at the time was a great place to cut my teeth. But they didn't have as focused a emphasis on coffee as I was, sort of craving at that time. And fortunately for me, I was able to apply there, and I remember walking into my trial shift, and there's a big Rohan Cook standing there. I'm like, oh, at least there's a familiar, because I was so nervous because it was such a cool spot, 3 bags. It was iconic at the time in particular, and I was so nervous and thought, I can handle these big days at this other cafe, but I know it's on a whole different level here. So it was pretty chuffed when I ended up getting the gig there.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a blast working together.
Such a fun. I still maintain that was one of the best periods of my life working at that cafe.
Yeah, agreed.
The crew were amazing. The vibe was so different for me. I'm from Camberwell, Surrey Hills, sort of the very sheltered area of the southeast of Melbourne, and walking into Abbotsford, this cool suburb, and this exposed brick cafe with stop sign chairs and upside down teacups as the lighting thing for me was something else. And drinking, what was the Clover coffee machine?
Oh, the Clover. So we had one of the only Clovers in Australia, and I don't know if you remember that. It was this big brick machine that was like a filter machine. It was like half vacuum, half like press kind of thing, and basically a big valve on the top of the machine would lower down, you'd put in the coffee, fill with water, you'd agitate it, and then it would vacuum, almost AeroPress it out.
It was quite a murky cup.
Yeah, it was. It was no good. But then
good.
Starbucks just bought the company.
Yeah.
They disappeared everywhere. And then I don't think Starbucks just shelved them.
Yeah.
And just went, no, see you later.
Yeah, they were able to replace it pretty conveniently with much more cost-effective batch brewing machines down the track.
I spoke with Tolman, owner of 3 Bags Full, and now restaurateur and that around Melbourne. He's still got them in his garage. He was telling me, I was like, can you drop them by? I want to get one of these bad boys out and be like, this is when we were trying to make filter coffee fancy through machinery. Now, I've got a question that I want to ask you here, and this kind of stems from a conversation that we've had. You're such a knowledgeable bloke. You've done so much work building your coffees, or building a coffee empire, I will say. But we even chatted about, and I still think you should do this because I think a lot of people would learn a lot from it, kind of chronicling this journey, kind of telling this story about building the businesses, building up that, the pitfalls, all those things in between. So I'm going to ask you a little.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's tax season, and we're all a bit tired of numbers. But here's one you need to hear. $16.5 billion. That's how much the IRS flagged for possible identity fraud last year. Now here's a good number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it. Guaranteed. Save up to 40% your first year at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
What are 3 lessons that you would like to give to someone either starting a business, opening a cafe, that you wish you'd known when you'd first started?
I think there's one important lesson that I was thinking about prior to coming here, and it's that there's a bit of a contradiction into one of the motivations into getting into venue ownership, whether it be restaurants or cafes, and that you're driven by a passion and an enthusiasm to express yourself. It's an emotional attachment, because very much when you set out to open a venue going, this is going to be a reflection of all my experience, all the things that have brought me to this point, and how I perceive hospitality and what customer service should be. And it shapes your product, your interior, all those many things. It's a very intimate process. And when people come through the door and they participate in that, it's extremely validating and a source of great pride. It's also very vulnerable, because if they don't come and if they stop coming, then you start to intrinsically think it must be something wrong with you. But inherently, one of the greatest strengths any person in business needs to maintain is an unemotional approach to the things that they do in their business activities, which obviously comes to odds with this driving motivation to express yourself in a form of passion for what you're doing. Because when it comes to making hard decisions, your emotional attachment sometimes clouds your judgment. So I wish I'd probably learnt that earlier, because growing businesses in particular takes a lot of time to look at opportunities and see what's right and what's wrong. And I've definitely made mistakes. No one's got a clean sheet when it comes to ventures. And there's times where I think, I let my imagination get away from me outside of what I know is I'm proud of the fact I've got a fairly shrewd business mind, and I've ignored signs in the past where I'm like, maybe I should be a bit more cautious about this sort of thing, to my own detriment, because, you end up thinking, if I just do this or if I just do that. But the cold hard facts of business are that if it doesn't stack up, and it doesn't matter how passionate you are about it. You can't pay your bills with well wishes. So that's definitely one thing that I wish I'd gotten out of the way a bit earlier.
Yeah,
and always keep it in front of mind now.
Absolutely, that's great knowledge. It's like when you see the the kid that's out there, the artistic kid that's running the amazing like art supply shop thing, and you're like, oh my God, how are they doing this? You're like, oh, they're just loaded. Their family's got money. There's no business decisions being made here. Whereas when you're running that business to survive and to thrive, you got to make those hard decisions sometimes.
And I think furthermore to that, another thing is just like you got to fall in love with boring parts. So like bookkeeping, because if you can't figure out how to allocate funds to paying all the boring things like GST and superannuation, then you're going to find yourself under a cloud of debt pretty quickly, because those unseen costs, they're not just unseen to the consumer at times, they're unseen to the operator when they're green, when they're going into this thing with like, I know how to do so many things, but the day-to-day of running a business is very different to being able to make coffee or do dishes or even unclog a toilet. Because at the end of the day, when you own a business, you're the janitor, you're the HR, you're everything when you get started. So making it a point to understand those financial benchmarks from the onset is really important, because you can look at an opportunity, and if you have a clear framework in mind to how a model is going to replicate and grow, then you can essentially reverse engineer your success and go, okay, well, I know that for this business to be successful, I need my rent to be no more than 10% of my revenue. And if I've got it down to 5%, then I'm kicking goals. It's either a really good lease or the business is exceeding my expectations. In the same way, does my business model allow me to have labour within certain percentages? Now, that's a big source of contention amongst a lot of hospitality businesses because of the various strains on the labour force, the increasing costs, which has gone up significantly, but also how expensive it is to make sure that a cafe or restaurant can actually function, because you need bodies, you need people standing behind the pans, you need people on the pass running plates and running coffees and that sort of thing. So being able to then make sure that you form a balance between meeting your customers' expectations whilst also not bankrupting yourself is very difficult. So for me, that was always reflected in our business model on the Nigels. So I've got 5 locations. We don't do table services, any of them, right? So people come up, they order at a till, one person does the service of a whole cafe. It's very easy for us to then allocate labour to people behind a machine, because coffee is our biggest priority. It's 80% of my revenue and most of my businesses. And I live and die by being able to execute on that value proposition. So we allocate the most amount of resources to that. So by being able to understand the financial model from an onset, we can look at new things and go, okay, the rent is X, and say it's $20,000. Am I going to be able, a year, or call it $1,000 a week? Am I going to be able to do $20,000 a week in revenue at this location? If my product or average spend is $10 a head, am I going to be able to do 2,000 people over that course of time? To cover your costs. And from there, you can do your due diligence to think, is this actually viable or not? And if the answer is no, then come back to that first point. You have to be unemotional about it. As much as you might love the facade, or you might love the area, you might love the opportunity, if it's not there, it's not there, right? And ultimately, when you pour yourself into these ventures, if it doesn't succeed, then it's really hard to detach yourself emotionally from that failure.
How do you go about dealing with the roller coasters of business? So, for example, I'm experiencing for the first time now, like the post-Easter period, where we're in the city, so a lot of people don't come back directly to work after the Easter period. And it's like, okay, well, I've got 3 staff for that day, and not necessarily making a lot of money because people aren't coming in at the usual volume they do. How do you first go about sort of dealing with that and then responding to it?
Well, it's tough as well, because that feeds into the being unemotional about the way you conduct your business, because you have minimum legal obligations with casual labour, but ultimately if it's a day that's not trading that well, you need the flexibility of an owner to save costs by sending people home. And at the moment, in the middle of a cost of living crisis, that's not that popular with casuals who are looking at their roster and going, how am I going to afford rent this week? But ultimately the priorities of the business have got to come first. Otherwise there's going to be no business there for you to employ people too.
Do you balance a fine line between you know that this person, do you ever sort of keep people on longer knowing
100%.
that because you're just I know this person's got bills to pay?
100%.
Yeah.
It has to be really bad for us to.
And you have to provide secure work as well. Otherwise they could go, and that kind of creates an issue later on.
Exactly right. And ultimately, I guess, to give you some ease of mind, it does swing back. We are in peaks and troughs and those sorts of things. And I guess you can't throw all those values out the window as soon as things get tough, right? You have to be shrewd about it, sure, but you need to make sure that you're looking after people, because without people, in the same sense, you don't have a business either. So trends will emerge, right? And it's about being able to predict them better. So you can manage people's expectations as long as you can, the better you can forecast, the more easily you're able to manage your staff's expectations. So it's something I'm really big on with my operations manager and my management team is like, we need to look at past figures, which is tough in an early business because I look at, for example, I look at my Armidale location, which is entering its third year, and we've gone up by 50% since this time last year. So trying to make a judgment call on labour 12 months down the track when we have no comparative point is really tough, you know? But at the same time, you're doing the Easter long weekend, you're paying $60 an hour to casuals or time and lieu to your full-timers, and you literally cannot afford to make a mistake in that sense.
I would say as well, and this is not scripted, this question, but I feel like the best success of what you've done at Nigel is probably building your team, because you've got some great people working for you.
Thank you.
And I think and it reflects like they're all very happy, like Nick and Ian, long list of others. And it's like, it seems like a happy place to work. So I would say, looking in, that seems to me like your biggest achievement.
Oh, thank you very much, man. I'm extremely proud of the team that we've been able to not only build but maintain. But is
that a focus for you as well?
100%. Recruitment is so important, and culture is it's a bit of a buzzword, and I'm hesitant to use it, but I ultimately use it quite a lot because it's a bit of an ephemeral concept. But you know it when you see it. Mm-hmm. And one of my proudest things in my business is that my staff seem to all like each other outside of work. They hang out, they do things in exclusion of me, which is great. But it's also meant that they set a standard with each other. They're open and transparent with each other's performance at work, and they ultimately make it a happier place to be. So, one of my challenges as an operator is to continue to foster that growth, because ultimately with hospitality, it gets pretty pointy at the top. There isn't a lot of opportunity, and we need to be cognizant of not over-promising. I think that's, the story that's been told by a million people who've worked in this industry is that, they go to work, someone who said there's going to be ownership stakes, there's going to be this, there's going to be that. And I don't ever want to be full of it in that sense. I want to be really clear about my goals. Like at the start of this year, I sort of said to my more experienced management team, like, guys, you need to be okay with the fact that this year is going to be about sustaining and not necessarily the sort of growth that we've gone through over the last few years, because I'm pretty tired. I'm burnt out in a lot of senses. It's been 5 years, and I guess I'm going to say probably one of the other lessons that I've learned is like, be really aware of the cost that growth comes at. Like, you want to build a business, not a cage, because ultimately once you go from 1 to 2 to however many locations or revenue streams, you are more held in obligation to more people than ever before, and that responsibility can make you suffocate. We've had a bit of a conversation with a few of my staff members about a collaborative project down the track, and I was talking about the ins and outs of that, and one of my staff members was like, "Oh, so how much money would I need to put in?" I was sort of like, anywhere between $20,000 and $40,000, and he's like, "Oh my God, that's so much money." And I'm like, "Mate, I've done this 5 times. Yeah. I sit with that thought and more every time we do this." Yeah. And it's healthy for them to go through that even thought process of being like, what's the cost of the cost, if that makes sense.
And it also probably gives them a little perspective of like, oh my God, he's done this many times. Jesus.
A question I'd like to ask both of you, actually, so not just for Dan, for you as well, Rohan. How do you go about managing sort of your personal life amongst, being so busy as well? Because you've got a wife and 2 kids, and, you've got a partner as well, and, you're quite involved with your family. So one thing I'm kind of dealing with is I feel like a bad friend and a bad family man sometimes, because I'm not responding or returning calls as much as I could because I stay back so long, and all those sorts of things. How do you both go about dealing with that? And this is a great nugget for people listening. Not necessarily opening a cafe, but having a business.
Yeah, I think the easy thing when you look at that is, obviously friends is like the very easy one to cut off. People go like, "Oh, I've got my job, I've got to see my partner," and they're like, "Oh, I'll cut out that side of thing." But I've really made a cognitive effort to make sure that I have time and that I set aside time. The one thing is it's going to change time to time. You sign a few more clients. It takes like a month or so of like reassigning that. But it's a similar thing to what you're talking about as we sign more clients on and more people here. It does start to take up more time. There are more pieces. I think the hard bit is there's more pieces where it can kind of fall apart. And so there's like more to clean up. But yeah, I think I've just made I've been very honest and open with my partner, and she works really hard and does that as well. And we kind of hold each other to account about what you can and cannot do and how much you need to put in, and calling each other out when it starts to feel like it's getting a bit much. And then I have a great business partner and team that, we can honestly talk about stuff, and we make those decisions where if we're going to lose a bit of money, we're like, mate, if it's worth cutting that one out and that's going to make us just sleep better at night and have a better time, then that's a decision that we have to make. So I think you have to, like you were saying before about being a shrewd business person, I think you have to be shrewd with your own life and really take it into your own hands.
Yeah, you've got to craft your own reality in a sense, which isn't always achievable because ultimately, as I said, you've got a huge amount of obligations and responsibilities when you run and own businesses. So when things happen, you have to be able to deal with it at all times. So I think the most important thing for me in my relationship with my wife has been that she understands the cost of our growth and what we want to achieve and how that's going to demand my time. And she trusts the fact that one of my skill sets is that I am good at delegating and I do trust people. So I do have a great group of people around me who I can entrust things to make sure that I do get what I need. That being said, at various stages, so I'll give you an example. When my daughter was born in 2021, we'd just opened our second location and we got plunged into what was then the final lockdown. So I had enough staff to work where I got to just enjoy being a dad for more or less 7 months while the businesses were relatively quiet. And I was very hands-on. There were still restrictions. So we spent a lot of time at home. It was wonderful for us. My son was born this year and I had to do shifts the next week, which wasn't the end of the world because they were only short. But, when someone calls in sick, I can't let the team go down when I can get in and pull a couple of lattes and that sort of thing. But it was a very different experience this time around. And, you compound the fact that much more complicated business with multiple locations and trying to grow something, the wholesale thing and the coffee brand, with also the compounding difficulty of having a toddler and a newborn. So yeah, it was just, for us, it's just about making sure that everything's at least honest and transparent between the people that you care about, right? So but it is tough. It comes at a cost.
So coming from that, we'll have to ask, I know we talked about this maybe like right on the first podcast, or we kind of talked about that stress and strain of it. How is it going for you at the moment, both with your friends, with your relationship and running this cafe? Because I think you were just saying before that how long, 6 months, however long you're going to be the handyman, the this, the that, like everything for that cafe. So how's it going for you, Kirk?
Yeah, it's a struggle, to be honest. It's like I've got so many texts and I'm not the greatest person with that on a good day. And so I'm just like trying to evolve as a person a bit, I would say.
Yep.
And, I feel bad not being able to attend certain things and not being able to I just kind of write off most of my week and have these windows where it's like, yes, I can do that. Sunday's the only day where we're shut and I'm like, yes, I can go, do whatever. But like my room's a bit of a mess. I don't wash my clothes as often as I should. I don't feed myself as well as I should. And it's all changing. Like it's getting better and I'm getting more organized and I'm out of the cafe a bit quicker than I was, last month. But
I mean, even here, you're now here doing this podcast. I know when I was like at my worst work-wise, even when you did get that like day off, I was like, all I wanted to do was just like sit and hide away in like the apartment because I'm like, it feels like I'm actually doing nothing for once and stopping. So the idea of actually like going out to see friends felt like a nightmare as well.
There's a simple solution. You just don't have friends.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
That's why you're so successful.
Yeah, that's what's working for me these days.
I might try that.
If I'm not at work, I'm at home with the wife and kids and that's about it at this time. And you got to be okay with that. Those are the sacrifices that you make, particularly early days, until you find yourself in a position where you can entrust more responsibility to other people, until you can build yourself out of being in the business all the time and focus on things from a more bird's eye perspective.
Yeah, well, I feel like I'm in like in the next phase, or me and my business partner are in the next phase of what we're doing as a business. Like we achieved opening and now we're stabilizing and it's like, all right, now let's move ahead with what we plan. So just working through that plan, I think I've found it more taxing, to be honest. Like, I'm so tired, and sometimes I try so much coffee through the day, and like, I don't feel like it's spoken about enough, the effect of that, to be honest. Sometimes I push myself drinking, like trying so many different coffees, trying to make it better, that it's like, it dehydrates you a lot, and it keeps you up awake at night a lot. I'm particularly bad because you should spit it out a bit more than I should spit it out a bit more than I do. But it's just, I find that I found the whole thing very taxing. I'm trying to overcome it.
Does anyone actually spit at the cafe? Because I've always found like the premise weird. Like, I understand the concept, but the idea of like someone, like, if there's nowhere you can step away to do it, it feels a bit like gross just spitting into a spittoon thing.
We used to. I remember, back in the day, particularly at St. Ali, when we had a pretty extensive dial-in process every morning. If you were consuming everything that you made to go through that process, you would set yourself up for failure that day.
Were you open though at that point? A customer's standing there watching you spit into a bucket?
I might explain this a little bit. So we used to have like an hour with 2 baristas to dial in, I think it was maybe 6 coffees on any given day.
That.
And so you'd have to actually, write out all the dose, time, yield, take a sample on the refractometer, which is a refractive index for people out there. You can Google that. So test the total dissolved solids of each coffee, and then take a picture of it or write it down in a diary. And it was like one of the best systems for tracking coffee consistency I've ever. And I think, going back to Leon Holdsworth, being taught that has been one of the best things for me as a barista.
Yeah.
So it was quite extensive, but like you said, if you're drinking all those coffees and
I'm fine with it if it's like behind a bar with closed doors. I just mean like the idea of like in service.
Well, they do it at wine rooms all the time, don't they? There's a spittoon there, so I guess it's a different perception with people. I don't spit at wine rooms.
Fuck! I'm not kidding, guys. That hurt.
What happened?
I just touched that. It was really hot.
Oh, was it hot?
Fuck!
Oh my god! Ow, mine's hot. Ow!
Someone turn the heat up in here?
It's getting hot. It's time for an extra hot take with 2 sugars.
For life! All right. So
that one was good. That actually got me. I thought you got electrocuted or something.
So did I, actually.
Well,
On the
that was the
cable.
goal. Oh, I'm getting better at this, guys.
Great acting. That was good.
Okay. Dan, you're up first.
Can we, for the love of God in this city, calm the fuck down on sandwich shops? Honestly, I don't fucking get it. It's sandwiches. I can make them. Why am I going to wait half an hour for some fuckhead with a panini?
Oh, okay.
Get a grip, Melbourne. Come on. We're better than this.
Push that button again like 3 times. That's 3 sugars. Oh my gosh.
Insert generic man's name, Delhi, and then fucking spit the same shit that everyone's doing about originality. When is the bubble going to burst? I don't understand it.
You withheld your hot take with fucking 5 sugars from me. I'm like, okay, Dan, shit. All right. I'm still kind of
knocked him off his chair.
I don't know. Like, I've got a good appreciation for the sandwich, but this is kind of what I feel like this is a symptom of something else, because it's very expensive to set up a kitchen, right? To have a chef employed, as soon as you got the extraction and all that sort of stuff, that's where it costs. It's cheaper and more efficient to set up a sandwich shop. But I will say this, little anecdote, my girlfriend went and got an extra hot coffee and asked for an extra hot coffee at a sandwich shop, and I won't name names, but the sandwich artist made fun of her for her hot coffee request. I was like, okay, all right.
Well,
Buster.
that's interesting, leading into my hot take, which is if someone orders a hot coffee, just give them a bloody hot coffee.
Okay, all right.
Enough of this going about, you know what? Yes, does an extra hot coffee taste worse than a coffee that's done to the right temperature? Yes, it tastes worse. Guess what? The person ordering the extra hot coffee knows that. They know what they're asking for. They know what it tastes like, and that's what they want. So make it for them.
Okay, all right. Well, my extra hot take is I'm gonna get fired up for this one.
Oh, here we go.
I'm gonna get real fired up.
I'm strapped in.
There's a certain coffee out there that the kids enjoy these days, and this is very niche, but I'll still get fired up, and hopefully we can bring a bit more attention to the topic. But there's a style of coffee out there called, or a variety of coffee called Eugenoides.
Eugie.
You've heard of Eugie?
Yeah.
Eugenoides? You suck! I want to hear about no Eugenitis anymore. I don't want to be offered it. I don't want to be drinking it. It tastes like wet socks. Eugenitis, come here. I'm coming for you. Eugenitis, I'm going to see you go.
That is the most fired up I've seen you for
I'm coming for you, Eugenitis. Get out of here. Sorry.
Very niche.
I feel like Kurt just needed This has just turned into the most bro podcast that I've ever seen in my life. Like coffee wasn't male dominated enough. We just got three blokes screaming around a microphone.
You're not screaming enough.
And I love it. No, I don't.
No, it got pretty hot there.
Yeah, it did.
Got pretty
Although
hot.
sandwich shops, yes, I agree. I get into this weird point though where I'm like, love a good sandwich shop. Love to go in and get a quick sandwich. But when there's a line for 50 minutes to get a sandwich, I'm like, what's happening? Come on, guys. You can make a sandwich.
Having said this, though, life hack. If you want to go to a Hector's Deli, they've been very good. I think we can all agree they're the OG of the...
They're the benchmark.
They're the benchmark. But if you go to their Fitzroy store at 8 a.m, you can get a mushroom melt and it's like minimal to no line. And their donuts are better than their sandwiches.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that.
Those donuts, I don't know how the hell they do it, but they are some of the best donuts you'll ever have.
Hot take. Never been.
There you go.
Okay, well, I mean, yeah, I don't go past 11 because it's like just unbelievably busy and you can only get a fried sandwich after 11 or something.
Full disclosure, I sell sandwiches in my locations.
Fucking this.
But
But
I'm
you're
not
not a sandwich
I'm
shop.
not pretending to be a sandwich shop,
Yeah.
right? The sandwich is a humble vehicle for meat
Yeah.
and cheese.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right, Spice of Life, Spice Melange. I like it. June 2 in cinemas now.
Every week.
Yeah.
Every week June 2 comes out.
Yeah.
I will see it. I promise. Next
you seen
week,
it, Dan?
I will see it.
I have not.
Okay.
I would like to very much, but
Maybe you can go to your favourite sandwich shop and then go to a movie after
time
and
for the
enjoy
cinemas
it.
isn't high on our agenda
Okay.
these days.
All right. Well, that was the extra hot take. I'm still kind of floored by that, to be honest. And got it jacked up from my delivery of mine. So, yeah.
The question is, that's going to be clipped and on the socials, and that's going to get some people
Yeah,
fired
come
up.
for me.
So
I'm
Yeah.
prepared.
He's
I'm
ready.
I'm
Okay.
ready.
come and argue it in his store and buy a coffee while you're there.
Yeah, when everyone's over sandwiches, I'll still be here selling heaps of coffee. So
Yeah.
there we go.
Well, Dan, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Can you please plug your stores, plug your coffee? What do you got? Where
Plug
can
it
people
all.
find it?
You can find us online, bornandraised.coffee. If you want to try the wares, that's our roasting business. It's just getting started, which is lots of fun. It's been
And
a massive learning curve, but
Unbelievable coffee.
oh, thank you
I've
very
had
much.
it.
Well,
It's
the
great.
tagline is incredible coffee, but
Yeah.
that's sort of what we've hung our hat on.
I've
for this
actually
time.
taken it the next level to unbelievable coffee. So
There we
I feel
go.
like that's really upping the game.
Indeed.
I work in marketing.
And Nigel locations in Hawthorne East, Glen Iris, Armadale, Cremorne, and Hawthorne.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. I would like to sign off. Can we sign off the way we started? A whim, a wet, 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 a whim, a wet.
Hey, Dan, thank you so much.
I like that. I like that.
That was incredible.
That is one hell of a way to sign off a podcast. Well done.